Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway, a nostalgic look back at our favorite Rangers from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Tom Browning.
With my co-hosts, Rob Berger and Mike Browning.
We can be heard on Google Play, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and of course, our website at gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. That's gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. Please check it out. You can capture all of our episodes on our webpage. You can contact us by just clicking on the contact bar. You can leave a message. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about the players that you would like for us to profile. Love to hear about maybe some of the seasons other than the 60s, 70s, and 80s that really made an impact on you as a fan. Again, we will be going off the menu every once in a while. We'll be talking about the current day New York Rangers, the state of the franchise, previous playoff games, impactful trades that took place in New York Rangers history. So wherever you listen to us, please hit subscribe. It's free. So without further ado,
here are your hosts, Tom Browning, Mike Browning, and Rob Berger. Welcome to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. I'm Tom Browning, with my great hosts, Rob Berger, and my son, Mike Browning. Guys, hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. What's going on? Let's talk about the Rangers first. It's been about a month and a half since our last podcast. At that time, we talked about the impact that Gallant was going to have on the team and all the rookies, all the youngsters, I should say, if they were going to make an impact. And now we're several weeks into the season, actually a couple months into the season, playing well. Rob, what is your take first on the season thus far with the Rangers?
I think maybe not their performance, but their outcome could not be better. I mean, to me, in second place in the Metropolitan with two teams in the division, Philly and the Islanders, who nobody was expecting to be at the bottom, at least with the Islanders.
Right.
I mean, they're going to have to work hard to not make the playoffs at this point. I know we're only a quarter way through the season, but I get pretty frustrated when I hear Ranger fans disappointed about how the season has started.
I think it depends on the type of Ranger fan you're talking about, though. I think if you're a kind of and Mike, I don't know if you agree with me on this. I think if you're kind of a passe Ranger, probably not, right? Probably not. If you're a passe Ranger fan who maybe don't get into many of the games or just kind of watch them from afar, but if you've been following them, watching them a little bit, you know that there's a disparity between the way they're playing against the under 500 teams versus the teams that are in the upper echelon of the league. And I think the record against the winning clubs is just about 500, and I think obviously they've got a great record against teams that are below 500. So there is a disparity there.
Which is what you should be doing, right? That's the strategy for all teams: is you 500 against the best teams and win the rest. That's all you need to do to be a top tier team. That's all you need to be a top tier team in the NHL.
I guess there's some truth to that, yeah. Although I think the elite teams,
any sport, with the exception of the NFL, the same goes for baseball and basketball too. I mean,
yeah,
be 500, a little over 500 against, the best and win the games you're supposed to win.
I still think though the elite teams though still play very well against the better teams in the league also. I mean, if you're in the top 3 or 4 teams in the league, I think you wind up most of the time. I think you wind up playing well above 500 against the better teams in the league. But Mike, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, you had that the last game against Colorado was kind of what they were calling a scheduled loss coming off of a back-to-back game. Starting a guy in his first NHL game in goal. So, hard to say. I think they've definitely kind of turned a corner. I think the game tonight against the Avalanche is going to be a good litmus test. I'm gonna kind of throw that other one out the window. See how they do. As far as the season as a whole is going, I think they're exactly what we thought we were getting in the Chris Drury era. This is a hard-hitting, fast, big, and tough team that is missing some scoring in the top 6 that's a void from Pavel Buchnevich, which is exactly what we thought was going to happen coming into the year. He did a good job. Drury did of creating an identity for this team. I think there's great chemistry. I think this is a team that really plays hard for each other and, seems to care, seems to play a little bit more relaxed this year than they did, a little bit more fun. I think they're getting the most out of their guys, but I think at the end of the day, if you are going to find a fault with this really great start, it's that they're just lacking some scoring in the top six. And it's something that we thought might be the case, as they never really replaced Pavel.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the top six, and it's, I listen, more than anybody, I hate making judgments on numbers this early, but their 5-on-5 has been very disappointing, and I think that's what needs to improve. They're just not generating a lot of offense 5-on-5. The only teams in the division that have been doing worse are Philly and the Avalanche. We'll never really know. It's what a shame with Sammy Blais that so quickly
my boy
gone. Yeah, what a disappointment.
You guys did not give him the respect before the season started. You guys are journeyman, fourth line player.
You're again mischaracterizing what we're saying. It's not that we didn't like Sammy Blais, is that we didn't like the trade. Pavel Buchnevich is having an excellent season in St. Louis. He's generating so much offense. He's become such a balanced offensive player. So it wasn't that we didn't want Sammy Blais on the team. Is that we didn't think you needed to give up Pavel Buchnevich. We think the price tag should have been lower.
As I was saying last time, I mean, you could have given up half, if not less, for Blais than what they gave up. And I think they're sorely missing Pavel Buchnevich this year. He's, I think, a point per game player. And it's not like he was, just a pure skill player. I think he definitely fit within the parameters of the type of guy that Chris Drury was trying to find. He was, not the biggest guy, but definitely wiry, strong, played with an edge, stood up for his teammates. And he this year would probably be the top offensive guy behind Panarin and Kreider. So they're sorely missing him. And, I think Blais was a nice addition to the middle or bottom six of this team. But, the trade kind of created one gap to fill in another, and they never filled in that top six gap.
Well, Blais got hurt. We don't know how well the trade, you can't really judge. Obviously, you can't judge the trade because Blais got off to a great start. He really changed the whole attitude of that locker room, probably more so than Reeves did. And
but he's not a top six guy.
Yeah,
he's not a top six guy. Yeah, he might be able to fill in the middle six for you. You might find a little bit of chemistry on the top line. Maybe they put him in that Dryden Hunt role. I don't know, but he's just not the type of guy who's going to drive the play and bring the amount of offensive impact that Pavel Buchnevich does. And that's probably what they're going to be searching for at the trade deadline. So, they were just kicking the can down the road essentially. So they're going to probably have to pay a premium for a guy like that at the trade deadline when they could have probably just kept Buchnevich and then found kind of a tougher grinder Sammy Blais type for a lot, cheaper at the deadline.
No, what they're trying to do though, I have to say, Rob, to your point about the 5-on-5 disappointment, I could name the reasons why the 5-on-5 disappointment. You got Zibanejad, Panarin, who's just now starting to click, Kakko, Hedl, Lafreniere, Krasov, who's no longer with the team. That's the reason why they've been very mediocre 5-on-5. The guys that are supposed to be scoring goals 5-on-5 have not showed up this year. If it hasn't been
don't blame Krasov. He never played this year.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't blame a guy not on the team.
Listen, I'm saying
straight bullets.
I'm saying before the season started, Gallant had what he figured to be the guys that could drive 5-on-5. Panarin, Zibanejad, who just signed that monster contract. Kakko was finally supposed to get on the scoring sheet this year. Hedl, who's still not doing anything. Lafreniere, who's been riding the pine at least once or twice a week, and then Krasov, who's not even no longer with the team. So you take all those elements away. That's the reason why they're very mediocre 5-on-5 and contributing to the fact they're not beating the good clubs in the National Hockey League. That's the reason. I don't think it's anything else.
How you're doing against other teams. is irrelevant to their 5-on-5 numbers. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it would be nice if Zibanejad scored more goals. I mean, I don't know how many goals that line can score though, right? With Kreider, Zibanejad does have 16 assists, and he potted one the other night.
Come on, he's going to be disappointment. Come on, everyone knows that the contract he signed, he's supposed to be lighting the lamp. He's not supposed to be, relying on him feeding somebody else to score goals. I mean, he should be. He's supposed to be one of the top centers in the National Hockey League, but he's not. He's not playing like it.
Well, every player goes through streak. I mean, he's always been a streaky scorer. Yeah. So I have no problem with what's happening. I think he'll catch fire, and he'll probably have 10 goals in 14 games or something like that coming up. So we know who Zibanejad is as a player, and I'm not worried. I think he'll get it together. But the real problem is, what you mentioned, the guys that you mentioned, Hedl, Lafreniere, Kakko. These are young guys, and it seems like Jury was putting a lot of eggs in those baskets of a lot of unproven guys, where he had a guy in Buchnevich who was one of the top, if not the top, offensive play driver last year.
These were first-round draft picks.
I know, but
years ago,
they're all under 21. Well, Lafreniere's in his second season. But how about this?
These are young guys. They got to develop.
Look, I still with all these guys, I stick with what I said at the beginning. It's all about next season, not this season. With the exception of Adam Fox, who has just been.
Right.
I mean, he's even more fun to watch this year. I don't even get it. He's generated more shots than any other player in the league, more primary shots than any. And he gets. I'm like speechless. He's so much fun to watch. And the past few weeks, so is Panarin. His passing is unreal. Dryden Hunt must feel like the luckiest guy in the world getting the skate with Artemi Panarin. That was not the plan at the beginning of the season for him. The passes Panarin makes, he's almost underrated, because I felt this year he hasn't been in the discussion at all in terms of top talented guys in the league.
He's just now starting to get it together, which is great to see.
Yeah. And
Adam
the
Fox
fact
might
that
be the best player in the entire league. I mean, he might be 1A, the best player in the entire league. I mean,
I don't know about that.
What he does. I mean, the impact that he has, both offensively and defensively. He just kind of does. I mean, yes, he's still very young. He's probably not the best player yet, but he might one day, and it might be as early as next year, be in that discussion. I mean, some of the things that he does is just no one else does that. That special generational breed of player where they just kind of play their own unique game. Something that I saw in the last Colorado game was the last game I watched front to back, and he was just standing in front of the net and deflecting one-timers from the other team just out of play, not blocking shots, and just hoping that he gets in the way and creating weird possible deflections that could be a problem for the goalie. He was very kind of resolutely and intentionally just deflecting the pucks out of the play, out of danger. Yeah. And a puck going at probably like 93, 94 miles an hour. I don't know. I just, the type of player he is, it just doesn't come along very often.
No, he's a no doubt about it. He's an outstanding player. There's a little bit of, I shouldn't say a little bit, but he's an understated talent. Guys like me who grew up watching Bobby Orr and Paul Coffey and Brad Park, I mean, they had more charisma to their game. They had more flash and panache. But you're right. Fox is very understated. He's very subtle in how great he is, and I think he's on his way to greatness. I really do believe that. And I'm glad we have him on our team. No doubt about it. I think he probably is right now the best player we have on the team. No doubt.
And speaking on their way to greatness, between the pipes, wow, he is.
Yeah,
Georgia's been great.
He's the only goalie that hasn't hit it by the numbers. He is the best goalie in hockey right now.
Georgia has been great the last week, no doubt.
Yeah, no, Shesterkin virtually every number is better than pretty much.
Stay healthy. If he can't stay healthy, come on. This is the third year in a row now. The guy has pulled a groin. What the heck?
He's to be back this week.
Say again?
He'll be back soon.
Oh, he'll be back soon. Okay. The guy will be playing 30, 35 games a year during his career, if we're lucky.
I'll put any wager on that he plays more than that this year.
Why would you say that? We're not even halfway through the season. He's already got his third pulled groin in 3 years.
All right.
Goalies get injured. I mean,
here we go.
Hey,
you guys make more freaking excuses.
I'm not making excuses. I'm fine. You think he's going to get hurt? How about this? Right now,
talking about excuses.
It's not an excuse. You're right, Tom. If that's how you feel, I mean, I often feel bad for you because.
Well, join the club.
I totally do.
Because 26 teams, 26 fan bases in the NHL, maybe even more than that, would like to have him between the net right now, between the pipes. He's so good.
He is.
A great read is Kevin Woodley, who my gosh, I'm blanking on who he writes for, but he's like the goaltender whisperer. He's done some great interviews saying how just pretty much all of the Russian goaltenders right now are just how they've become a factory of great goalies.
Yeah.
It was nice to see Georgiev bounce back. I think it's very mean and evil what they did to Adam Huska, throwing him between the nets.
Oh, they had to believe it. They had no choice.
That's just not nice. I mean, why not Kincaid? I don't know. Maybe you guys know. Did Kincaid play the night before?
No, it was COVID. He was on the COVID
I
program.
think Kincaid was on the COVID list. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
that was rough.
The worst game this season in the NHL. Most goals above expected, and also at least it wasn't against like Buffalo. He was going against Colorado.
Listen, one thing going for Georgiev, and the stats don't lie. He's played his best hockey in his career against the best clubs. You got to like that about the kid. He obviously was in a mental funk this year. He saw his grip slipping away with the team. He knew he was a backup goalie for Shesterkin. But once he knew he was the guy in net, once he knew that he might be there for a while, based on what Gallant may have told him, based on what the trainers may have told him, based on Shesterkin's injury history, the guy has risen to play elite-level goaltending for the last week and a half to 10 days. There's no doubt about it. You can say what you want about Shesterkin being great, and he has been very, very good, very consistent when he was healthy.
Great.
But Georgiev has picked up where he left off a couple years ago when he was manning the net, beating the big clubs, and he
had 2 strong games in a row. I mean, he was terrible against the Blackhawks, and he was not good the game before that on the 4th against the Blackhawks. His last 2 games were great. His game against what was the last game? Sorry, against Nashville. He's
got a .946 save percentage.
That was his best game of the year. The majority of his games have been bad. Higher expected goals a lot more. Higher goals expected than average or expected. But his last 2 games have been solid. He was solid against Buffalo, great against Nashville, and Saros was great in that game as well.
No, he was excellent before that, Rob. Come on, I mean, Gallant was singing his praise.
He really wasn't. Name a game he was a little above average in the
you got the stats.
San Jose game. But he was terrible 3 games ago against the Blackhawks.
He's got a .946 save percentage.
That's good. But again, and we should get onto our topic, but remember, save percentage is a stat without context, right? What we've been screaming about for decades now, that, it's like when you see a goalie make a lot of saves, but they're all bad shots. The game against the Blackhawks, they weren't shooting strong, and he allowed a lot of goals. But listen, he's a solid backup. I thought going into the season he could be trade bait. I don't know if he is. I don't know if Kincaid is going to be strong enough.
No, they're not going to trade Georgiev. There's no way. Gallant loves the kid. They're not going to trade Georgiev, especially with Shesterkin. The guy can't stay healthy, so there's just no way they're going to trade Georgiev. Georgiev has to get it in his head, though, that when Shesterkin comes back, he's going to have to realize that he's 1B, but he is going to be playing a lot of hockey. He'll be a very important part of this team. But just to wrap this thing up, I think, Mike, what you're saying is somewhat true about the Rangers bringing more grit, but I think their grit and their toughness is still inconsistent. They're not still on par with what the Islanders do night in, night out, the Bruins do, the Calgary Flames, the Washington Capitals. there's still that inconsistency where they fall back into their old, figure skating way where they're not forechecking hard enough. They're not playing that north-south game. I know that drives Gallant crazy. So I think there are some elements there that are improving, but they still have a long way to go before that culture, if you will, changes where they're looked upon as one of the tougher teams to play against in the National Hockey League.
The Islanders may be tough, but they sure don't score goals.
No, they don't.
That's what wins hockey games.
But there's one thing you can set your clock on with the Islanders. Whether they're losing 10 in a row or they're winning 10 in a row, they played the same hard, grinding north-south game in and game out. They never take a shift off. They still bang the heck out of you.
I got to say, if you were an Islanders fan, you'd be saying the same thing about them. I mean,
you'd be screaming.
Looking at the Rangers, I mean, this is a team that is to be fair, we haven't seen this from the Rangers in a really long time. They are bullying teams. Like Jacob Trouba sent one guy to the hospital, and then another guy to the Nathan McKinnon to the locker room next game. He's had, this guy's like just punishing people with big hits every single game, and they're not even fighting them anymore. I mean, the Rangers are starting to how many Ryan Reeves doesn't even have to do anything. Because you have guys like Dryden Hunt, like Kreider, like Trouba, playing a really big game. Not to mention guys like Rooney, and Goudreau who play a heavy game too. I mean, they're wearing teams down. The only sure that every guy they're flesh and blood. They're going to be bruised and battered and maybe take a couple shifts off, but they're playing the way that you're kind of describing the Bruins and Islanders have played in the past. And I thought the Rangers got the best of the Bruins physically by a long shot when they played a couple of games ago. So I would say that the Rangers are certainly playing with the identity that Drury and I'm sure Gallant were hoping for before the season. The only real consistency has been, as we mentioned, the scoring. They really are having issues, and I know a lot of that is on Zibanejad's shoulders. But again, and this is a whole other topic that we can probably spend an episode talking about with the trade deadline. What are they going to do to address that at the trade deadline? Because they have a lot of cap space this season that they're not going to have next season. Kind of burning a hole in their pocket, use it or lose it. And with a goalie like Shesterkin and the high end talent that the Rangers have, I'd like to really see what they're thinking about doing at the trade deadline. They can make a pretty big splash.
Well, Rob is right. Rob is saying it's next year.
Next year.
You really have to be concerned about. However, if Kakko and especially Hedl, they're not going to do anything about Lafreniere yet. Lafreniere is on the clock next year. But this year, if Hedl and Kakko still are not putting pucks behind the goalie, then those two guys I can see being at risk of being part of a package maybe around the trade deadline. I don't think it's going to happen this year. It's probably more next year.
Kakko's an RFA at the end of the year.
No, I'm talking about trade. Well,
he's an RFA. So the big names next year: Strome, Kakko, and Georgiev are the big names for next season. Some other smaller names too: Gauthier, Rooney, whatever. Those aren't going to break the bank. Well, but Kincaid also, Georgiev is going to be an interesting thing because remember he's making almost $2.5 million this year. Well, he's going to want. He's only 25. That's just what's worrisome. I don't know what to do with that. Well, Tom, I hear you saying that you can't trade him, but
it depends on Shesterkin. If Shesterkin keeps
$2 5 million.
If Shesterkin keeps on going down with injury, you're going to keep Georgie. There's no doubt about that. You're just going to keep him. Mike, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, like you guys were saying, I mean, next year that's when the Kreider extension. Well, I think the Kreider extension kicked in this year actually, but that's when the Zibanejad extension kicks in. That's when the Fox extension kicks in, and you're losing a ton of cap space this year. I think the Rangers have close to $10 million in cap space, so they can bring in several guys. I mean, they can go nuts. They obviously have a ton of draft picks to trade. I know next year is the year that I think they're more likely to compete with the core that they have. But I would not rule out this year, given where they are in the standings, given how well they've been playing, their goaltending has been, and how well, they've been playing despite guys like Zibanejad slumping. You can bring in, a Tomas Hertl or a Claude Giroux even, and see what happens. Why not? I mean, you have all the cap space in the world before it all goes away next season, and it's much tighter. And by the way, don't even talk about trading Kakko. I mean, let's be real. The guy is so talented, and he's a terrific defensive player. And the guy that you need to really, I think, is a good comp for him would be Sean Couturier of the Flyers. Sean Couturier came into the league. He was, I think, a number 3 or number 4 overall pick.
Yep.
And he was touted as this big two-way center who was going to get you 80, 90 points and just be a completely shut-down guy. And he didn't have his first – he didn't break 40 points until his 6th or 7th year in the league, and now he's a 80-point guy who plays elite defense. These guys, I mean, if you traded Kakko for pennies on the dollar, I mean, you would rue the day. He would come back and just crush the Rangers 2 or 3 years down the road. I mean, just be patient with these guys. His
defensive numbers 5-on-5 are better than any forward on the Rangers.
Well, great. I mean, that's great that we got a defensive specialist that we drafted, number 2 in
but you can see the talent.
That's great.
You can see the talent. It's clear.
Yeah.
You watch him play. The guy has talent that is very unique on the ice. I mean, you could tell that one day it's going to click, and you're going to get the Kaapo Kakko from the World Championships, where he was just absolutely dominant on both ends of the ice.
I hope you're right.
And if we traded him for some, for some washed up guy, I mean, we would rue the day. I'm telling you. It's just not good asset management. You just got to be patient with these guys. You really do. Not every guy's going to come in to the league and score, 30 goals as a rookie. That it does happen, but those are the type of guys that take a little bit longer to develop, but you be patient because it's worth it.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I don't think we're looking at a Ricky Middleton situation here. I really don't think so. But I was alluding to packaging somebody that you said that they could package for a huge player at the trade deadline. So I wasn't saying we should get pennies on the dollar. I'm saying, these are guys that are at risk of getting moved for a big name player that you had mentioned that might catapult this team at the trade deadline. But
I'm talking about this trade deadline. I'm talking about a rental. I'm not talking about a guy that you trade, a cornerstone like Kakko for.
All right.
I'm talking about like a Tomas Hertl or a Claude Giroux who would just be on the team for 1 or 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what I meant.
Real quick, Rob, what is your thoughts on Keiondre Miller? I think he's been a big guy like that should be, throwing his weight around a little bit more and not using his stick as much. And I think he has regressed a little bit. I've not been too impressed with him. Before we get to Lafleur, what are your thoughts on Miller?
I don't know if I feel comfortable saying he's regressed, but I don't think he has progressed as much as people would like to see.
Right.
I don't know what you think about that, Mike.
Yeah, he's not really standing out, but I think he's been a really good partner to Trouba on that pairing. I think he's still getting a little bit, comfortable in the league. And here's, another guy who it's not like he was drafted in the top 5, top 10. I don't know if, the Rangers were even planning on him being in the league this soon. But he had such a good camp and he kind of forced his way onto the team. So, he's still very young and it's a guy I'm willing to be patient with as well, given the physical tools that he has and kind of the offensive, game that he's flashed as well. So I'm just waiting for him to put it together. I'm not panicking or anything. A guy was one of 3 first-round picks of that year, who I think he was the last pick or second to last pick in the first round or something like that, a late first-round pick. I think the fact that he's been in the league already for as long as he has at such a young age and made an impact is house money.
Yeah, I think Rangers. I just wish they would keep the kids in the minor leagues a little bit longer than they do. We talked about that during the last show. But all right, so real quick before
How
we
about
get
this?
to,
Let's
yeah,
end on a positive
yeah,
for Ranger fans. And when you look at the standings in the Metropolitan Division, the
Yep.
bottom teams are the New Jersey Devils, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the New York Islanders.
Yep, that's true. Yeah,
Can't beat it.
Everything else this year, I know, we're bringing up things that we're not happy with or things we might be complaining about. This is all gravy. This isn't a team that you talk about the top 10 teams in the league. Nobody would think the Rangers are would be even close to that. And they're second place. They're 1 point behind the Capitals with a game in hand.
yep, that's very true. Yeah, that is very true.
And they have the second highest point percentage in the National Hockey League. That is impressive.
Right, and you want to see that progression happen in the second half of the year by beating some quality teams. I guess that's a fair statement to make if you're a Ranger fan at this point in time.
It would be a great sign for them to have a statement win against Colorado tonight, especially before a potential league shutdown.
I know.
Which, if you recall, the Rangers had played Colorado before the last COVID shutdown too. So.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. So. Well, let's segue. Let's get away from that for now. Let's the team that most surprised you and the team both to the upside and the downside. Mike, we'll start with you first.
To be honest, and we talked about this before the show, but I thought, and this is probably to the detriment of the franchise, but I thought the Sharks were going to be much worse than they are this year. Okay. I might be biased because I live out in the Bay Area and watch them a lot, but I was really anticipating them to be really close to last place this year. They really are, just aside from their top 2 or 3 guys, just a patchwork of journeymen in their middle 6 and bottom 6, and they're playing really, really gutsy hockey, and I think they're Bob Boudner has been a really great coach for them, and I thought, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year, but they're going to fight for a spot, and definitely surprised me.
And how about the team that really surprised you on the downside?
It's got to be the Islanders. I mean, I had them coming out of the Eastern Conference for the Stanley Cup, so they look like they're not even going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I can't put them in that category yet because of just the crazy stuff they've had to deal with COVID and being on the road for the first 15 games of the year and the injuries they had. If they were all healthy and playing this way, I would say definitely. But I can't put them in that group yet unless they continue to play this way the rest of the season. I think Vancouver and Boston, I think, have been disappointing, especially Vancouver playing fairly well last year. I thought they were an ascending team. The Panthers.
You know what?
I'm sorry.
The Vancouver Canucks, I do not think were as bad as people thought. They had so many games where they faced a goaltender that played out of his mind. I think Bruce Boudreau I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but they're going to be knocking on the door.
Yeah. But up till the time Boudreau took over, I think they were a very disappointing club after it happened last year. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I shouldn't have interrupted you. I don't think there were high expectations for them though, this year.
And the Panthers has been they're a very good team, and they're proving it again this year. Tampa's going to be there. Canes are playing great, and the Ducks. How about the Ducks playing as well as they are in that division?
The Ducks, they have all under 25 years old. Yeah. Jamie Drysdale, Mason McTavish, Travers Zegras, Isaac Lundestrom, Sam Steele, Troy Terry, Sonny Milano from Massapequa. It's very frustrating for people who live on the other side of Southern California.
Yeah.
Not man, are they surprising.
Yeah.
First place.
They are.
I definitely had that going into the season.
Okay.
I had the Islanders in last and Ducks in first.
Okay.
Totally.
All right.
Don't go back. Don't read any emails or listen to anything. Just take my word for it.
Okay, so I guess we've got Rob's surprise and
the Ducks are the surprise. I mean, in terms of, I feel like it's so easy to say the Islanders. I'm also surprised about the Flyers, especially since Carter Hart played so well the first 6 weeks of the season.
Right.
And now he's regressed a bit. He was playing so well. He's one of the top 5 goalies in hockey for a short bit of time. And Winnipeg a bit. I think Colorado's still the best, though. I think they're going to turn around.
Okay. Well, that's kind of an update on around the league, the Rangers. Let's go to the Flower, Guy Lafleur. Could be the greatest right winger that I've seen in my lifetime. When you look at all the great, Bossy's up there too. I have to say, I would say Lafleur and Bossy are the top 2 that I've seen. Top 2 right wingers I've seen to ever play the position. The number 1 draft pick, 1971, first round pick for the Canadiens. The only player to, what was it, Rob? 6 straight seasons of 50 goals or more. The first one to do that. And obviously played on 5 Stanley Cup champions, the great Montreal Canadiens teams during the 1970s. Mike, let's go to you. What are your thoughts about what you learned about Guy Lafleur with the great Montreal Canadiens from the 1970s and the early 80s?
Yeah, I think he kind of represents that almost that stereotype or prototypical Quebecois, uber talented player that I think really represented that era of the NHL, kind of the pre-European takeover. And, I think you just don't see that quite as much these days. But, I think he really did represent that era of hockey, with the Canadians, with their francophone, lineup just dominating with, skill that just didn't come from anywhere else. And he was the embodiment of that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And of course, Rob, he played with the New York Rangers in 1988. And that was the season where I lived in it. One of the several years I was away from New York in the 80s, living in Illinois. So I didn't really get a chance to see him much that one year that he played with the Rangers. But he made an impact. He scored some key goals against some key teams to help the Rangers make the playoffs that year. What are your thoughts about Guy Lafleur?
Well, let me ask you. One of the interesting things in sports fandom is when a player from a team you hate puts on your jersey. What was it like seeing the Flower? Memories of '79, skating in the Ranger blue.
Yeah, it didn't. It's funny. It's a great question. The Montreal Canadiens. They were never a team that, as a Ranger fan, I had the hatred for or just the animus for, like the Boston Bruins, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the New York Islanders. They just didn't. I looked at them. I think a lot of New York Ranger fans looked at them with just awe. They were just in awe of the dynasty, the organization, just the history of the Montreal Canadiens, the gold standard of excellence in the National Hockey League for so many decades. It was different. I don't think Ranger fans felt that same, negative feelings, hatred that, as I mentioned before, that again, like you had with those 3 other teams. So I didn't feel that way. I think living away from New York maybe had a little bit of an impact, but the Ranger fans loved him. I mean, they chanted Guy after every one of his goals when he played for the Rangers. He didn't score a lot. He only had 18 goals that year. He had some injuries and he didn't play a complete season, but he had some key goals at key times for them. And I think they really respected having a great player from the great Montreal Canadiens teams, as they did when Messier came, Gretzky came to New York, Esposito came to New York. Those players quickly won over the Ranger fans, and he did for that brief stint that he played for New York. I was surprised that he didn't stay with them for another year after that one and only year he played for the Rangers.
And that's just part of being a Rangers fan. You expect that any player can become a Ranger at some point.
Yeah,
doesn't matter who.
I think every New York sports team, well, maybe not the football teams, think that have that mentality.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's being a New York sport fan. But especially the Rangers, because how many guys, especially late in their career, like Lafleur, have put on the Ranger sweater for a couple seasons. So it happens all the time.
That was a typical New York Rangers move, getting Marcel Dion, who was, who also was a great player. Who, according to the information I read, that was a tough draft pick It was between Lafleur and Marcel Dion, and I think it was Sam Pollock again. Who was the GM of the Canadiens at the time? I think it might have been Serge Savard. I think it was Serge.
No,
Serge
Savard.
He played with Savard.
He played with Serge Savard.
That's right. I'm trying to think of who the GM was of the Canadiens at that time. But anyway, it was between Marcel Dion and Guy Lafleur, and they picked Lafleur. And, of course, Dion actually had a better start to his career than Guy Lafleur. It took Guy Lafleur a couple of seasons really to win over the Canadian fans, where Dion had an immediate impact with the Detroit Red Wings. I mean, he was
But it was easier. I mean, he was stepping into a bad,
Right.
It's easier to step into a not good team, especially then when there were only 12 teams.
Of course.
You're getting lots of minutes. I mean, yeah, and the pressure of stepping into the Forum in 1971. Right. Oh boy.
Exactly.
The pressure of playing in Montreal now. I mean, the old expression is, the Montreal Canadiens play for 82 Stanley Cups a year because every game is that big. So. But it's the Dion, what a draft, huh? What a 1-2. Lafleur Dion.
Incredible draft. Incredible. And again, the Rangers had both of them. And this is a Rangers show. He is the forgotten hockey player at Broadway, a great player like that. Very few Ranger fans probably remember that they had Guy Lafleur. But, they had a lot of guys. They had Eric Lindros, right? And they had Esposito. They had Ken Hodge. They had, Yager. Although Yager was probably the most successful of all of them for the brief time he played for the Rangers. And Guy Lafleur, and there's Mike, you hit on the head. So many guys wind up burying their careers or ending their careers in the Ranger uniform. Gretzky,
St. Louis.
Yeah, St. Louis. That's right. So it's endless. It really is an endless list of players.
I would love to talk about Lindros one day because his first year he led the team in goals and assists.
Yeah. No, But he was never the physical player with the Rangers that he was with the Flyers because of all the injuries.
He was still playing. Yeah, but I mean, he was still
right.
He led the team in goals, assists, and time on ice for for forwards. Another name I think I'm forgetting, Pavel Bure.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh,
that ended his career here. Another Hall of Famer.
The list goes on.
Brendan Shanahan.
Yeah.
Shanahan.
Oh, believe me, there's a lot more.
Shanahan was good here, but most of those names that Lafleur wasn't a star here, but I mean, remember he was also in his post-retirement seasons.
Right.
But those other names, all for the most part, Shanahan, Messier, Gretzky, Lindros, all had Yager, great seasons in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I think the Rangers that the Shanahan Yager years were like the closest the Rangers ever came to building a true contender kind of piecemeal with those kind of older star players.
Yes. Michael Nylander was on that team too, was excellent.
Yep. So that top line was
But Guy
Guy
Lafleur was
not to go down a tangent.
Yeah, but Guy Lafleur was a very not only was prolific, but he was a clutch goal scorer too. He scored many a key goal in the playoffs. The Bruins in the 78 finals. He killed the Rangers in the 79 finals. He was a very clutch goal scorer. He really was. And
the blonde hair flowing in the wind.
Yeah, the little that he had left.
Yeah, when he was here, it wasn't as good. But back in the '70s when he was putting in 50 a year, which he did for 5 straight years.
Yeah, 5 straight years, 6 straight years of 50 goals or more. And he scored 60 goals. I think that was in 1977-78. He scored 60 goals. And then, of course, Mike Bossy, the two of them were just outstanding. Bossy arrived a little bit later. But he ended his career with the hated Quebec Nordique. Last 2 years of his career, he played there. So who'd have thought, if you're a Montreal Canadian fan, that he would end up playing with the hated Quebec Nordique? That'd be like, Brad Park or Jean Rattel or Gilbert finishing their career with the New York Islanders. That was a very unusual situation. And the fact that he played with the Rangers after he was already inducted into the National Hockey League Hall of Fame is another unusual situation. I think he's one of 3 players that still played after they had been inducted into the Hall of Fame. So I guess Courtney Howell was probably one of the other two. I guess. I forget who the third one was. Yeah, it was a very interesting player, an outstanding player, a great player, one of the best Canadian players of all time. I think he finished second in goals, and I think he's still the the leading point getter in Montreal Canadian history. But his time with the Rangers was, I think, very productive, and the fans really took to him. He was a favorite. He played well when he did play. I think Ranger fans felt that the Rangers got their money's worth from him the 1 year he was there. And it's a tribute to, I guess, Esposito, who brought him in. But the story is that after he left Montreal, Messier saw him in some workouts. Mark Messier, I don't know how the story unfolded, but it was Messier recommending to Esposito that he could seriously consider bringing in Lafleur, and Esposito did. And that's how he signed up with the New York Rangers for that one season.
Did his leaving have anything to do with Bergeron being let go? Because Bergeron then became who was a longtime Nordique coach.
Yes, that's very true.
Returned to Quebec.
Yes, he did.
The Kings had an eye. There was a story I remember back in LA that there were talks of Lafleur playing in LA with specifically with Robitaille, but also Gretzky, that French connect. But that didn't pan out. He went back to Quebec. I guess he always wanted to play in Quebec.
Yes,
where he's from.
And there was that association with Michel Bergeron. You're right, that was mentioned. And the irony is that he left Montreal because he had a falling out with his great teammate and friend, Jacques Lemaire, who became coach of the Canadiens and instituted a real defensive-minded philosophy with Montreal. And, of course, Guy Lafleur never played defense, was not known for his defense, did not pride himself, regarding his defense. It was all offense for the most part. And, they had a falling out, and that's when Guy wanted to be moved and leave the organization. So that's an interesting thing that transpired there with two great teammates, two successful teammates. But anyway, Rob. I like the production. I love it. You got to keep that up next show. So, any closing thoughts on Lafleur and Mike and Rob before we sign off for the afternoon?
No, just I think this is a show about the forgotten hockey players. I don't think anyone's forgotten who Guy Lafleur is, but they might have forgotten that he played on the Rangers for that 1 year. So a little bit of insight into that season, and was definitely interesting to read up on.
I agree.
And I think I'm glad that you brought up Lindros, because I gives a good nice segue, because when we talked about Guy Lafleur, the first person I thought of was Eric Lindros, and then started thinking about Pavel Bure, these Hall of Fame guys that had a cup of coffee here in New York. Yeah,
no doubt. All right, well, I know you guys have a hard stop right now. Let's get back to profiling some of the Rangers from the 80s. I saw some information on Tony Granato the other day, and James Patrick, and a few other Rangers that big stars in the 1980s. Kelly Kissio. We haven't done Kelly Kissio yet, have we? We have to. That's another one that was a very good
former Shark, Kelly Kissio.
Mm-hmm.
Great San Jose Shark.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, guys. So we'll get a show done, hopefully, early to mid-January, and think of some topics that you want to talk about, as well as the fans who tune in. Our numbers still look good, so I want to thank folks who do tune into our podcast. It's greatly appreciated. If you do have ideas, suggestions on topics, please feel free to let us know on the webpage. It's greatly appreciated. On behalf of Rob Berger and Mike Browning, this is Tom Browning saying so long for the forgotten hockey players of Broadway. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for listening. This has been a Go Tommy Boy production.